All right,
All right.
Eric, thank
Thank
you.
you. So I instead of a slide deck, I set up my slides as a website. So I'm gonna send the website in the chat in case anyone wants to, follow along or speed ahead or look at it later or whatever. Um, and if you have any questions at any time, definitely feel free to interrupt me because I have my sh screen sharing here and I can't see the chat. So interrupt at any time. But thank you for the intros. It also kind of helped me think about what to talk about here. But as Ina mentioned, I'm a solo practitioner, bard in DC and Maryland. I've had my own firm since 2021, and before that, I was doing aviation finance of all things. But now my practice is mostly small businesses, individual founders, and actually international developers working with American companies on the legal side. So I do a lot of corporate contract work. I do a lot of general regulatory liability mitigation, product counsel, a little all over the place on the legal side. And on the programming side, I do some uh, contract programming work with clients, but most of my programming time these days is spent building apps and solutions for professionals in general, but largely small law firms as well. So my firm is called Varia.Law, and my my other company is called CamoText, where I focus on privacy preserving software. And the main software product is a program that detects PII and other sensitive information from text and files and removes it so you can be a little more compliant when prompting AI. And I'm a co-founder of a young daughter who's made efficient work essential, which is what AI is all about. So I'm going to go ahead here. So what is generative AI? Artificial intelligence has been around for decades. It's not new at all. The new aspect of it is creating new patterns. So before, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but before AI, machine learning, these terms were all about providing a computer with information and patterns and how to apply those patterns to parse data, come out with some sort of answer for what you're looking for. Now, these programs can not only take massive amounts of data and give you something useful from them, they can come up with their own patterns, they can generate their own data, and they can do it in a human readable manner that that gives their output endless possibilities. So, what we're going to talk about is some simple ways to use this product to make your work more efficient, higher quality, save you time, and one thing I really want you to remember, and I'll repeat this a couple times, is I like to think of these products and services as kind of a genius intern. So you have someone who is exceptionally capable, very smart, endlessly patient, looking to please you, but you ultimately need to review their work and you need to be careful about, what you might tell them. So low downside, high upside as a time saver whose work you ultimately review is a good way to think of it as well. So, as I was saying before, this is the new concept here is generating new data, generating new patterns, generating new output. So, on first glance, you can think of like, oh, this might generate human readable paragraphs. It can write things for me, but it's actually far more broad than that because when it can generate new data, it can generate digital anything. And when you generate digital anything, if you pair that with the physical world in some way, you can generate physical anything as well. So this is a technology that is, as you can imagine, changing everything. The effectiveness of the AI models has, in the last 6 months, in my opinion, gone close to exponential, and we still have a long way to go. So things are changing very quickly. But what I want to talk about today, hopefully will persist into the future as these models get even more powerful. So if you're interested in how these AI models were built, the sort of long and short of it is that an unbelievable amount of data was collected and then cleaned, which is to say, duplicates were removed, maybe categorized by language, maybe if these were scanned images of information, the images were cleaned up. Um, and then these massive silos of data were run through computer programs to recognize patterns. So what is like a sentence? What is maybe a spreadsheet? What is, a piece of JavaScript code? Basic patterns to kind of categorize these things. Then basically these companies just threw a bunch of algorithms and patterns at these computers and kind of stepped away and said, let's see what happens. And frankly, OpenAI, Anthropic, these companies that have made these AI models don't understand everything about how these models work. And so that is something to remember as we go forward too, because just like the human brain, uh, we understand some basics on how these programs work, but there are limitations, and those limitations are essential for legal work to remember. So I have a page here on terminology that I'm gonna skip through because you can always come back to it if there's a question. But the main one I want to hammer home is what's known as prompting. So prompting an AI model is basically requesting something from it, asking it a question, telling it to build something for you. That's all kind of in this big category called prompts. And when I speak of models, it's just the specific kind of AI program or LLM that you're prompting. So if you use ChatGPT today, if you were to go to ChatGPT's website and the bar came up for you to ask a question, the default model, to see this image is already out of date, which is funny. The default model will be called GPT-5, and you would ask it a question. So you would submit your prompt, it would do some processing and return something to you. I promise this is like the end of the technical stuff. Okay, and yeah, right on cue. Look, if you've used Google, you can use generative AI. And the nice thing about generative AI is that it's the human-like aspect of the output and the human-like reasoning process that's going on behind the scenes means that even if you're not incredibly specific, if you allow some sort of flexibility in the interpretation of your response, you might even get better answers sometimes because of the reasoning and the connections that maybe you didn't think of in your prompt that the model did think of. So this is all to say that you can get great output even out of basic prompts and sort of general questions, but I'm gonna help you create better prompts today. And as I mentioned before, think of these tools as a genius intern, extremely capable, sometimes best with precise instructions. Just tell it what it needs to know, and every time check its work. And I'm sure many of you have heard of hallucinated case citations. Um, but a thing to remember in the background is these models, and I keep referring to them like they have personalities. They kind of do in a way, because their ultimate goal is to get to a response that you want. So they're they have a little bit of a proclivity to answer in order to please, not to answer correctly. So it just so happens that often the correct answer is the pleasing one, but something to remember is that you can convince through your interactions with AI models, you can actually convince it that what you're prompting it is correct, or so, you can affect its output is something to remember as well. So the other thing is a genius intern is just it's not going to replace you for years and years. And even then I'm not totally convinced, and it's going to be a huge help for you in the meantime. So AI is not going to replace you. It's going to replace the programming side of me way before it replaces any of you. In fact, it already kind of is. And harnessing AI, it just gives you, it's an absolute superpower. It gives you a fleet of junior associates under you that are happy to work 24/7 and happy to work on hard problems for you. So it's very exciting for me to hear that many of you haven't used it yet and are looking to use it in your practice, because I think you are going to love it. So, this is a question that I feel like is not talked about enough, because there are so many legal AI startups and services these days that it's really hard to know where to start. And it's nice to speak to a group of solos and small firms because you are just not you're not going to use Harvey, and I'm not going to use Harvey or the other really specialized services that are extremely expensive and require a lot of legwork getting things up and running. Um, as I phrase it here, I spend 1.5 burritos per month. So I spend, I use a $20 subscription for a couple different services. And depending on your prompting skill, you'll get to the same place as you would with some of these 5, 6 figure services. It's all about your prompting abilities because ultimately, on the back end, all of these services are using the same models. It's just a matter of what happens in between the user and the model. So if you look at I'm going to pause just for a second. If you look at the sort of life cycle of what happens when you have a problem and you want a solution and you want AI to help you with it, what happens is you enter your prompt into whatever interface, website usually. Usually it's a little bar that says, "How can I help you today?" You enter your prompt. You can attach files, whatever it might be. You hit enter. What happens after you hit enter is not that your prompt goes right to the model. What happens is your prompt then falls under the system prompt of whoever is running that model. So for ChatGPT, if you go to chatgpt.com, OpenAI has set up a website so you can interact with their hosted AI models. But because they're the ones hosting the website, they want to prevent people from saying, "How can I create a nuclear weapon using some old uranium I have? And how can I, insert other problematic use case of AI?" So what they do is they inject something called a system prompt. So when you prompt an AI model, the host system prompt comes right in under it and tells the model how to interpret your prompt. So these system prompts are very long, very specific. They lay out exactly what the model is supposed to do and not do, the tone of voice, all of that. So the life cycle is your prompt, system prompt, model, system prompt, back to you for the response. That's just something to keep in mind. So if you go to a website to use an AI model, your output is dependent upon that, and that system prompt can be changed at any time. The other thing that's essential to remember is that these AI models, you will get different responses for the same request. And that's because these are not what's known as deterministic or, vending machine. If you hit this button, you get this result. They're what's known as probabilistic. So if you order something at a restaurant, your dish is going to be a little different every time because of the way it's constructed and, the various factors that go into it. Okay, so let's get to prompts. So again, prompts are what you provide to an AI model to get it to help you or to give you an answer. And the basic kind of formula I like to use with prompts are tell the model what its role is. So, you are a senior paralegal that's, yada yada. What its specific task is, so what its end result, what output you want, like what form you want it to take, what your goal is, then instructions. So this is where you lay out, I want it to um, follow the general form of this document I've attached. I want you to, ensure that this is from a buyer favorable perspective. I want you to, use formatting similar to, any kind of instruction you can think of that is, relevant to what you want on the back end. And then context is sort of a catch-all. So context can be anything from, I've attached a bunch of documents that you need to use in your response. go to this website, research this statute. It's, a Friday afternoon and the opposing counsel is going to be pissed off. So, you know, keep your answer short. Any sort of relevant context you can kind of dump in there as well. So here's a little example of how you can structure that. So I know it sounds like a hassle, but frankly, this is where you're going to spend most of your time, which is constructing your prompt, making it specific and making sure you think of like specifically what you want your genius intern to do, because frankly, the output's going to be near instantaneous and it'll be worth the time. But also, if you get into sort of a conversation with the model, so you ask for something and then you say, well, I actually meant this and I was hoping you could do this, and you're going down, the divergence from what you initially wanted is just going to get wider. So if you can kind of narrow it at the beginning and be specific, that really helps your output. And the last reason is, and I do this all the time, spend some time creating a really good prompt and just ask multiple models the exact same thing. So, I'll pull open ChatGPT, I'll pull open Gemini by Google, maybe I'll open Perplexity, which is a search tool, which I'll link at the end, and I'll just ask it the exact same thing. And I'll look at what they responded with, and then sometimes I'll paste one into the other's interface and say, what do you think about this? Did you consider this? So you can just play them off each other. And it gets a great result because um, some models might think of things the others don't. They might learn from each other what you're, in addition to your prompt, what you're looking for. Um, and frankly, it makes you read the responses even closer. So spend time with the prompt. Don't be afraid to ask the same model the same thing over and over because you're going to get different outputs. They might only be slightly different, but they'll be different. And just paste the same thing into a bunch of different models and play them off each other, and you're going to get, a better result at the end than if you just did it one time and went with the initial response. This is not strictly necessary, especially if you're a newcomer to this, but when these models receive an instruction, um, one of the first things they do is they categorize what they've received in sort of themes or maybe priorities or types of information. And they use this structure called XML, and it's sounds more intense than it is. Really, it's just these tags right here. So above I mentioned, role, task, instructions, context. Sometimes I just use these little tags to be specific with the model, like what this text is. And that can be useful for your own sort of visualization of the task. And, it sometimes helps the quality of the output, but frankly, these models are so good that it might not be that necessary. So, um, any questions so far before I keep going? All good?
I have a question, Eric. So what is, you talked about different models and they kind of evolve very quickly. So the most recent one and most updated is, you said, Model 5, right?
Yeah, for ChatGPT, yeah.
For ChatGPT. What is it? Like I heard that the term AI agent or
Mm,
something. What is it? Could you tell me what is that and how
yes.
it's different from just normal AI?
Yeah, so that is certainly all the rage. So when you think of an agent, you think of something or someone that's doing tasks on your behalf. And so when you're just sending a prompt to an AI model, it's just a one-to-one like request response.
Hmm.
With agents, you can give an agent an instruction and basically say, continue prompting until this is finished. So the agent will receive the response from the AI model and then decide whether it needs to prompt again, refine until it actually gives you the response. And agents can be used for this purpose. The sort of like, I have a to-do list before I tell the user what the final answer is. Or they can also be used for things outside of the AI model. So, you tell the agent, I would like to book a three-star hotel in, um, Mexico City this weekend. If you could like reserve for me, please do. And so the agent will use the model to research options. It could navigate to the internet browser to, uh, you know, come up with a reservation link for you. So agents are basically just, you can think of it as like a multi-step AI helper, I suppose.
So is it like a separate thing that you have to purchase?
Usually it's yeah, usually it's like another tier to have that option. So I wonder if I can actually, oops. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm in a guest browser right now, so I'm not logged in, but oops. Let's see. So typically the options for okay, sorry, I'm having some redirect issues. But basically under the input bar on these AI models, they'll have little little different options for how your prompt is used. So some will have like what's called a deep research option, which is
Okay.
exactly what it sounds like. You input a prompt and the model just takes more time to process and search and really reason through its output. And then when on a lot of them, if you pay for a higher tier, they'll have an agent mode
Ah,
where
okay.
it's basically much, much more of that.
So it's a
So yeah,
tier thing.
typically,
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something too, if I could. When you started out, you talked about more expensive as opposed to Chat GTP for $20 a month. And I keep getting these calls, I guess everybody does, from Lexus and Westlaw.
Hmm.
Their system is so much better because it's just geared toward law stuff as opposed to the whole world. And thus they have a focus and they have refined avoidances of hallucinations because they double check their sites and a whole bunch of other stuff. So my question to you is it really worth that money, especially if you're someone like me that may not be too adept at putting together prompts?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Those might be the only exceptions because of the private data that they have. So
Yep.
Lexis and Westlaw, they're not only their case repositories, but their summaries, their tags, that's all proprietary. And to my knowledge, has not been reached by any of the other models. Otherwise, that would be
Mm.
a colossal lawsuit. But that that is a case where they have a specialized set of data and the AI is trained on it. And I can imagine that for case searching and summarizing, it would be very good. I've used it to a limited extent, but I can't say like for example, the model's quality is not going to be better than ChatGPT or Claude. It's the data that it's working on that only it has access to. The question, though, is if you already have a Lexis or Westlaw account and they're pitching you on um, a huge subscription upgrade to access this AI capability,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you want that research assistant specifically for this purpose, and is that worth it? And that's kind of case by case, um, but that is certainly one case where there's a specialized set of data that's not publicly accessible, and there's nothing similar to it that's publicly accessible to that extent. So that unfortunately might be up to you whether it's worth it or not. But I would just say that if you're thinking of using their model for more general purposes, like drafting forms or for summarizing pending legislation or drafting client releases, that sort of thing, I doubt it will be any better. It will probably
Mm.
be worse than the general models. So just keep that in mind.
And I wanted to kind of like piggyback from that question actually very quickly. So the agent, the AI agent, because you gave this example of, hey, book a flight for me, right? Or book, like, find a place, right? So
Mhm.
the agent has access to those things, for example, for to credit card, or I don't know, whatever,
If
to
you wanted
actually
to.
complete the task, right? So is it possible to give to AI my LexisNexis access and tell him, hey, use this access and do research? Is it possible, or is it kind of like,
So it is possible. The issue is Lexis will probably detect some irregular
mhm,
activity on your account,
I
and
see.
it would be up to their terms, and if you have an agreement with them, it would they likely have some protection against this because any sort of automated access, because what happened, and is still people still try to do, is they use that sort of automated access to just scrape, download and
Yeah.
copy like on an automated basis. So I would think they'd probably detect it, but you can always set it up to look a little more irregular and human-like. But I kind of have my doubts, unfortunately. So
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So if you're on this website, I have some videos here of examples where I did these are pretty short prompts, but just to get the idea across of um role, your task as a leading expert, task, read the materials twice, then summarize, and then instructions, and then for contacts. Oh, I actually should mention this. I always like to um, include at the end of my prompts, ask any necessary clarifying questions first, and that kind of is a catch-all for really narrowing your prompt, getting the quality and the output that you want, even before they start with their first response. So here's for those of you that haven't used this sort of tool yet, this is what it'll look like. And this is an older model. This is O3, which I still really like. But so as you can see, it's reasoning. It's going to navigate to this link, searching the web for congress.gov. It's saying what it thinks it should do. Um, and there you go. 50 seconds. I must have sped it up somehow. I don't know. But and there's the output. So I'll move on to the next one. And again, this link is in the chat for anyone who wants to um, look at these. So here's another use case that I really like for LLMs, which is creating a basic form that I will then review, change, adapt afterward, but something to start with. So this is a simple master LLC operating agreement. I'm asking it for to draft a series LLC under this master. So what it does is it reads the attached agreement and follows the instructions here. You know, you get it. So it reads the context, and there's the form output. So it's just something to start with, you know.
Question, you gave it a basic LLC operating agreement and you asked it to produce a series LLC OA. How's it finding out what a series LLC is and what one of those forms looks like? Where's it getting that info?
From its mountains and mountains and mountains of data it was fed. So this is and it's a combination of what data it was fed, trained on, cleaned, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it's a combination of that. And if it needs more information, it'll search the web as well, kind of corroborate. But typically, it's just based on its existing knowledge and what you provide it. So in this case, I gave it a document to work off of, and I specified some terms, and its generated output was based on a combination of that. It didn't say that it navigated that it like searched the web at all. So what it generated was probably based on its last snapshot of data, which at any given time is probably at most a couple months old. So the sort of thing that a generated form like this would pull from would be a mountain of publicly filed documents, a mountain of law firm, articles and blogs. It could be from the Delaware Secretary of State. It could be from Delaware corporate law. All of this is relevant and would be parsed in some way by the model behind the scene, and it just seems impossibly fast, but it's just how it works.
And can you limit uh, what AI can use for data in the prompt?
Yeah, you could specify, don't use anything before this date. Now,
Mhm.
whether it that would require that the model's data be tagged with
Yeah.
timestamps in some way. So, it's certainly not guaranteed, but you could say rely only upon this link of this most recent statute,
Mhm.
or you could say rely only upon instead of like search your data and filter it in this
Down
way.
there where the white trucks are.
Sorry?
Mark, did you say something?
No, sorry, I'm in the car.
Oh, no
Okay.
worries.
I didn't mean to. I was speaking to the people in the car.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
So for the litigators, a great use case for LLMs is stress testing, strategy, negotiations, sanity checks. And um, this is where the sort of human conditions can really come into play, where you can really get creative. So on these sorts of use cases where you want a quick second opinion, maybe an issue spot, negotiation strategy, sometimes it's actually better to not give it too many instructions, to let it be flexible and creative. And it might, as I said here, it might feel ridiculous, but you can specify moods and conditions and settings to try and tweak the output. So I have some examples there, but there have been studies and these are kind of based on older models, but the quality of the output certainly can depend on how you, in a very human way, treat the model or frame the question or frame the setting. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So back to some notes on prompts. The clarification requests at the end of the prompts always helpful. Um, Categories, there's some overlap. Um, but if you want the model's output to resemble, for example, your own writing, your own tone of voice, attach one of your articles or something that you've created before and tell the model to mimic that, and it will do so. Um, this formatting is always an issue with anything digital sometimes. And more subjective outputs like the negotiations, issue spotting, that sort of thing that maybe requires a little more creativity, sometimes does better with less specific detail and is very useful for you trying with multiple models, playing them off each other, and seeing the range of responses you get. So I can't believe I've gone this long without talking about privacy yet, because privacy is privacy apps are most of what I build. But with these models that are hosted by by companies externally, which will be everything that you use, unless one of you listening has a very impressive server rack in your office. Um, when you access these websites to query these models, that you want to assume the worst. You want to assume that anything goes in is retained. And there's a lot of dancing that these companies do to assure you they're not training on your data, and therefore it's private. But there's more than just training. So when you enter something into the prompt window in these websites and you hit enter, there's many instances where your input can be retained. So the first is the website itself. So you're accessing the website, you're hitting a button, that record is going to the website's server host. That's not even relevant to the AI model. That's just, any company that has a website, they have a log of input to their site because it is going to their server to then go to the AI model. So that's one. Then the logs that what actually does make it to the model has logs of what's input and output. So it's just a record of, you know, this data came in at this time, this data left at this time. So that's another kind of a log. And then when the information is accessed by the model and it's doing its processing, it's doing its thinking and how to come up with its output, um, that processing stage, that's kind of relevant to whether or not it's being trained on your data. So if you think about it in those three categories, like the website, the model logs, and the model training, those are, huge opportunities for issues with confidentiality and privacy. So saying that the model doesn't train on the data is not enough. Like the website needs to not retain logs, the model needs to not retain logs, and it needs to not train on data. But this is all to say that you'll never be able to keep up with the privacy policies of these companies. You'll never be able to escape external reasons why they have to preserve logs, like this judicial order right here, where OpenAI had to preserve output logs. I mean, you really need to be very careful about this because uh, once it's in there, just like any other sort of digital software as a service. So, um, and I've gone through all of this, but there's more detail on the site about how you also can't really convince the model to forget it. Once it absorbs it into its data, it takes a lot of effort to sort of overwrite that if you even can, which I don't really think you can, and you can't with the website logs. So
If you go with one of the more expensive
mhm.
programs like Westlaw or Lexis, is part of what they're selling you that it won't retain it?
Yes, but there are a couple things to remember with those. So the basically all of the paid versions have privacy settings where you can say no training, no collection. However, you're still sending information to servers to then be blocked or to then be erased after a set amount of time. But I will say that the two risk vectors that will always be there are when the data is in transit, it can always be intercepted. And the other is as I mentioned earlier about system prompts and safety, so requesting information on how to build a nuke. Um, these services all have a policy to retain, flagged, potentially troublesome prompts for some amount of time for their review process. And it is that vague. So you can imagine that in legal practice, there are some times when we have questions about potentially problematic things, So the safety flag um, retention policy, that is a little dicier. I honestly don't know the policy on even the highest, enterprise tiers, whether they retain those or not. I imagine they still have to, but at the end of the day, like for sort of a hard and fast rule, I like to say, just make sure on your device, sensitive information does not go to an AI website. And so I built a tool to help with that. It's called CamoText, and I won't spend too much time on it because I know I've been a pretty long presentation already. But it's a application where you can input text, load files, you hit anonymize, it detects things like names of individuals, companies, birthdays, monetary amounts, account numbers, all that sort of thing. Um, Displays them in a key for what was removed, and then in the output here, scan, make sure it didn't miss anything, then basically copy the output, use it in the AI prompt. So I built this for myself about a year ago because I was manually redacting things from documents. I was manually redacting inputs, and I just wanted to build a tool that made it faster. And it's nice because it replaces the sensitive terms with a hash, and you don't, it's kind of a mess to read as a human, but the AI models don't mind it. Um, so it's just whether you use a tool like this or not. As part of your prompt process, just take some time and make sure that you're removing sensitive items or things that might, uh, ultimately be discoverable or cause your client some confidentiality breach issues, data breach issues, whatever it might be. Um, and what should I tell my clients? So by my clients all tell me that they're using ChatGPT for first drafts and first impression legal issues, and it's so I at least have to tell them of the privacy and hallucination issues. But tell them the truth. You're using AI to be more efficient, and you're careful about ethics and privacy. And ultimately, it gets them a better product. It gets them a cheaper product, and it's essentially several very smart associates working with you. Um, and this is this is an actual response I received from ChatGPT once, and it just kind of highlights the hallucination issues again. They've gotten better, of course, and they will continue to improve, but there will always be some hallucinations because that's the nature of these models. They're human-like in their reasoning. They want to please the prompter, and they can be convinced of things that don't exist in their data set or aren't exact matches, or, maybe they're convinced that it's something new that they haven't yet added to their data set. So you're always going to have to be careful of hallucinations, reviewing output, double checking, if there are cited links, actually making sure that the statute says what it says. But even with all of that care being taken, you're saving a lot of time, and you're gaining a lot of power with these tools. Yeah, and I think this is the end. Yeah, so just some best practices to remember here. This is sort of the bullet points for the whole presentation. So remove sensitive text before AI sees it. Just keep it simple. I use private modes all the time. I'm very privacy conscious, but it's just great peace of mind to remove sensitive items at the beginning. Um, CamoText inserts placeholders so you at least know the type of data that's being removed. So you might similarly keep notes for yourself if you're removing so much that you might forget what was originally there. But just do it as the first step. Take privacy as the first step. For prompts, think about role, task, instructions, and context. And it seems there's this like very deep human um like reaction that you're being annoying by asking the model the same thing over and over or asking multiple models at once, but it really helps your output, and the models don't mind. They love answering questions for you, I promise. Um, Review and verify the output. It's on you at the end of the day. You're responsible for the output. Um, it's there's no shortcut to that. There never will be. Um, and remember, it's a genius intern. So again, very capable, very eager to help. But keep it on a need to know specific instruction basis, and you'll do great with some low stakes initial tasks like take a look at this document. What commercially standard provisions are missing or strange here? What sort of areas of liability jump out to you? Um, what sort of other areas of law should be considered or should be brought to, if it's another um, co-counsel or international deal, whatever. Just second opinions, issue spotting, another like brilliant set of eyes on your shoulder is a great way to sort of dip your toe into this technology and see how it can help you. Um, And yeah, so just some parting words, I guess, after questions, of course. But you're not getting replaced by AI anytime soon, especially the litigators. You will never get replaced by AI. Um, but you're going to have more time to do interesting and um, very human and like cutting edge work. The easy formulaic um, grunt work is for AI now. Um, However, if you don't use it, you will get outpaced by others. That's just a fact. And it's there's such low downside and high upside if you're using this technology the right way that it's a no-brainer. I mean, the cost is it's comical. I'm sure it'll go up in the future, but the cost benefit is, in my opinion, is insane. I didn't talk about programming with AI at all because that's a whole nother thing, but it's crazy and finally it's fun, frankly. Like um I enable voice mode sometimes when I'm on dog walks to learn about new concepts, talk through some strategies, maybe try and practice a language, anything that's maybe not as professional will also kind of give you an insight into how these models approach your prompts and how they can help you. So, um, yeah, you can use it for many things. So I will pause there. I put a bunch of links at the bottom here. If you click these, there's LinkedIn and whatnot. I I post about a lot of tech and legal things from my law firm account, a lot of AI and privacy things from the CamoText account. So if any of that interests you, by all means, we should connect and follow and all that stuff. But um, anybody have any questions or thoughts?
Well, other than ChatGPT, which we've talked about, and then we've talked about Lexis and Westlaw, what are some other apps we should look at?
Great question because I have them right here. So, I mentioned ChatGPT a lot because it's the most popular and it's sort of the name people know. Um, these all of these models change a lot. So I'm never going to say like this is the best for this thing or this is what I would use for this. Um, However, ChatGPT by OpenAI, Claude by Anthropic, and Gemini by Google. Um, I'm not going to say they have the best models, but they certainly have the most compute power, and that often translates to the best models. So I would at least try them if you're looking for models to try. Um, but they change often, and frankly, it's not helpful for me to say use this model for this, use this for that. Just try them out. They all have free tiers, obviously careful with the privacy stuff. But the other service that I really want to mention that I don't think is talked about very much is Perplexity. So Perplexity is a it's just an AI powered search engine. So it looks like all the other AI apps. It has the search bar here. It has the deep research, attach a file, that sort of thing. But you can think of it as a combination of Google and ChatGPT. So it is, it's not like the other models where it will first rely on its own trained data. It will rely on web search just as much as it will on trained model data. So I like to use it a lot for, find some links to, um, public filings about this, find some links to statutes about this, find some, find and summarize this sort of thing. Um, Very useful tool. Some of you might have seen in the news that they actually put in a bid to buy Chrome from Google, which is just staggering, how quickly they've gotten so large. But I would just say give this a try next time you're searching for anything and just see how it goes. I think you might be pleasantly surprised. So these are the ones that I generally list, but every day there's something new. I would just say that if some hot new startup promises like a very specialized AI use case, an interface, what they're actually selling you is a website, a system prompt, and then probably ChatGPT on the back end. So just be aware of that.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, I learned a lot. And I
I
have
hope I
just
didn't ramble too much. I felt like
no, it was just a lot of useful information. I really appreciate the special practical examples. I have a question about the non-legal side of practicing law, so which is, business development. Are there anything like also practical advice that examples that you can offer of how solo practitioners and small firms can use AI for business development?
definitely, definitely. I mean, I like I'm sure like many of you, I really hesitate to spend time on creating content or client alerts or writing articles and blogs about topics. And these services are absolutely unbelievable for those use cases. Writing blogs, researching cited links, something that is like 80% of the way there, and you just need to comb through and put your touches and review on. It's incredibly useful. I write some articles, especially on the CamoText blog, about AI and privacy issues, and whether that's like what anonymization for HIPAA means with these tools. Those articles would have taken me far longer pre-AI, for the same quality and same level of research, just because of the, again, the sort of grunt work that's taken on by these programs. So I really like them for writing sort of non-billable stuff that you then review and polish. I don't know how many of you host your own websites, but these tools they're better for coding than they are for everything else, which is saying something. So it can generate a website for you very quickly, and then also instruct you how to set it up, how to host it, how to use Namecheap or GoDaddy or whatever. You can do that in the morning. Um, and Perplexity is also, in particular, is pretty good at finding leads for you. If you have other types of business development, conferences, speaking engagements you're trying to get into, um, these are all things. If there's a sort of online business development tool or strategy you used before, I would be surprised if there isn't a way to improve it using these tools.
How many of
Okay.
these tools are free and how many of them have a fee?
I think all of them have free tiers. They're usually limited in some respect. For example, uh, you might need an email to log in. You might need a basic account that's not actually billed for anything. Obviously, on all of the free tiers, they're retaining everything you send to them. So just be aware of that. But I'm pretty sure they all have free tiers. I personally subscribe to ChatGPT and a tool called Cursor, which is a coding specific sort of interface. I spend $20 a month on either on both of those, and I get everything I need out of them, frankly. Um, the next tier up, the pricing is honestly pretty standardized across the industry because all of these companies are unprofitable and trying to sort out how to do any of this. So typically there's a free tier, there's like a $20 a month tier where you would have to use it quite a lot to hit your limits on that. And then there's a $200 a month tier where the functionalities will be a little better, a little stronger. The deep research option will be even more powerful. Um, I've tried that tier and it was noticeably better, but the cost wasn't quite justified for me. Your mileage may vary, of course. Um, and then this is probably not relevant for many of you, but they also offer API pricing where you would pay like a fraction of a cent per word or something. But that's a little more technical. So the general heuristic for the industry is 0, 20, 200 per month overall. Oop. But of course, I'm sure as soon as I mention that, they'll change that. So
Well, if we have, do we have any other questions? Let me check the chat. No, I don't see anything in the chat. All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
for
you. It
having
was very excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, it was, I mean,
me.
I learned a lot.
I'm glad. Yeah, save the site, and if you forget the URL, I have a pretty unique name, so I think you'll be able to find me somewhere. But I'll hopefully come to another meetup.
Yeah. All right. And I think that's it. We will, well, thank you so much again, Eric, for sharing your
Thanks
expertise
for
in this.
organizing. And this is fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you.
excellent. Yeah, thank
Sure.
you.
Well, thanks to Eric. I didn't do much. But we will then will so just I will send an email with the next meeting, which will be in person. I think probably in September. So please be on the lookout, join, participate, and hope you have the great rest of the summer, which is kind of not a lot left. All
Have
right.
a nice vacation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.